I like to get up early in the mornings knowing that I'm going to be able to help people. You help them go home, you help them to go to work, doctor's appointments. I feel like $1 million when I'm able to help somebody and they give you a smile when they see you coming.
For so many years, the story has been the only way that you can get around LA is by a car. We are going to change the story of traveling in Los Angeles. This is about a picture for Los Angeles County that has different ways for different people to get to the things that they want to do.
I love my job a lot. I go home at the end of the day knowing I save a lot of lives, and it's like I say, I treat everybody like if it was my own family out there.
The goal of First Last Mile is to focus on those micro conditions that can make or break someone's decision to take transit. We're looking at the nitty-gritty conditions of the streets around our stations, the connections to our communities at a level of detail and with an eye that we haven't turned toward the community in the past.
Transportation agencies are morphing into much more than just moving people. We are not your grandmother's transportation agency. We are beginning to step into leadership voids all over the region. We are becoming a non-traditional entity that is an economic driver.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Metro's first State of the Agency Breakfast. We're pleased to have you here today. We are going to take a look back of the past year and a look forward in where we're headed for our next FY budget year. This has been an exciting year for us. We have a lot going on, as all of you know, so we're pleased that you took time out of your busy day to be here with us. This is also being live streamed today, so that all of our folks in our divisions across the agency could also see the State of the Agency report. So anybody, in fact, out there on YouTube could watch it. So we're gonna try to get you guys out of here in an hour. We know that you're all really busy, and we're gonna hear from our current chair, Mayor Eric Garcetti, our future chair, Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, and our CEO, Philip Washington. So let's get started, and I'm going to ask Mr. Chair, Mayor Eric Garcetti, to step right up.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How's everybody doing? The years tell us things that the days cannot see. I love moments in time when we can punctuate what is often a giant run-on sentence of life. We can have a comma to pause, a period to finish, even an exclamation mark on what we have accomplished together and a question mark about the future. And this is one of those moments where we can take stock of where we are, where we have been, and where we want to be. And I'm so indebted first and foremost to the people of Metro, the men and women who run this agency. It is the most powerful, most important agency that is the least known, I believe, in Southern California. One that every day moves people, moves them to their families, to their jobs, to their communities, and is constantly itself on the move, looking for ways that we can rethink, what is a transportation agency about? What can we do to improve the quality of life? Because after all, we're not just about numbers and budgets. We're not about miles and gallons. We're about looking at ways that we can have a better experience and a better life here in Southern California. Second, I'm so grateful to serve with this board and to be handing over the baton at the end of this month to my dear friend Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, who will take over as the next board chair, to serve with her extraordinary colleague Hilda Solis, longtime friend and champion of communities often overlooked, to see Jackie DuPont Walker, who, as I always say, is the only normal person on the board because we're all elected officials. She's the citizen representative, but who brings a wealth of community focus and more importantly, neighborhood building to the board. And Ara Najarian, who is somebody that is a past chair. He has his own name right under his feet in case you need to know who he is. But also somebody who has been a constant voice and institutional memory alongside with John Fasana, our longest serving member of the board and the man who I inherited the chairmanship from. So thank you all for what you do. And of course, you'll be hearing in a moment from our fearless leader, our CEO, Phil Washington, who has continued to set the pace not just for us inside this organization, but nationally and internationally as the leading transit executive, I believe, in this world. Today, we take stock of having the will to do what we want and the resources, finally, to make sure that we can realize those dreams. When we close our eyes and imagine what this town will be like in 2028 when the Olympics come here and the Paralympics come here, we have an opportunity to have that fixed point on the horizon and to imagine who we are, who we want to be, what we want to say about our city and the quality of life here. And so when we look, too, at what Los Angeles has been in this glorious hall where thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have come through to get tickets in the past in a growing metropolis, this is one of those moments in one of those great decades where if you close your eyes for a moment and imagine the future, you might see high-speed rail coming through here. You might see a Dodger aerial tramway leaving from here to go up to a baseball game. You may see a reimagined downtown and civic center. You may see a place where the tents are gone and the housing is up. A place that brings people together from across this region. A place where maybe there's an express line that goes without a single stop to our airport. The things that we can imagine at this moment are limitless. The question is, what will we do and what will the focus be? But the voters of Los Angeles gave us an overwhelming mandate where they said, and this is an extraordinary amount of trust that they placed in all of us collectively in this agency, to say, yes, tax us not just once, but twice, and never sunset that tax. To have achieved the historic vote of Measure M, the largest infrastructure initiative in United States history × 2, is a testament to your work and our collective vision. But that trust must be earned each year. We must show the public that their tax dollars, $120 billion in the next 40 years that we will spend of Angelino's money, is indeed well spent. Because they said yes to 15 new and extended transit lines. They said yes to active transportation and low fares for students and seniors. Yes to more resources for cities, and much, much more. When I became board chair at the beginning of this fiscal year, I said we'd be focused on 3 things: building, riding, and planning. In other words, how could we build more and faster? How could we make sure that we had a better ride for those who are on our system and those who would come to our system? And how could we plan environmentally, plan our neighborhoods, plan for housing, be a planning agency, not just a transit agency, but one that could plan the future? I think as I come to the end of my term as chair and look forward to my new title, which is the best title in any organization, immediate past chair, because it sounds prestigious with no responsibilities. So I look forward to a year of that. But at the end of the term, I think we've all collectively made some really significant progress in all those areas. The first one, build, is pretty straightforward. It's about keeping the promises of Measure M. And in December, just 1 year after voters had adopted Measure M, we were out in the San Gabriel Valley, breaking ground on the Gold Line Foothill Extension Phase 2B to extend that Gold Line through the San Gabriel Valley from Azusa to Claremont and beyond, even across the border, we hope, with Montclair. We're approaching the home stretch on the Crenshaw Line, which will finally give us a transit route to get to the airport and link up with the People Mover, whose contract we awarded from the city of LA, the biggest contract in LA city history, just a couple months ago. And we're making progress on the Purple Line every single day. I can hear it from my house. For example, Section 2 broke ground in early February. That project alone is creating 20,000 jobs here in Southern California. Good, middle-class jobs so that we can't export someplace else. And when Section 2 opens in 2025, it'll take just 20 minutes to travel from Century City to downtown LA. That's faster than a car with no traffic. That is something I think all of us will look forward. So the bottom line is when it comes to the build, we are keeping our promises. Still, when we talk about our priority to build, we can't ignore the fact that our final Measure M rail project will break ground in, wait for it, 2053. That's a long, long way out. My 6-year-old daughter, Maya, will just be about my age when she rides the last new train, and traffic and congestion impact our people here today, which is why we decided to take an extra leap this year with 28 by 28. 28 projects that would get done by the Olympics and Paralympics. Not easily, by the way. Some of them are slated to already be done by then, but some will require all of us to collectively stretch to that point on the horizon that I mentioned, to go to our federal and state partners and to say, you can be a part of the greatest games ever put together for the Olympics and Paralympics. This is an American project, and let's get it done. Projects like the Airport Metro Connector, the Gold Line Foothill Extension, the I-405 South Bay Curve improvements, the Sepulveda Transit Corridor, the West Santa Ana Branch, and the I-5 North projects. So we are building for today and tomorrow. Which brings me to my second priority, the ride. It's about making transit safer, about making it more pleasant and convenient. And if we're honest with ourselves, the snapshot today, as heroic as the work is in this room and across the agency, for too many people it's not a pleasant enough ride. It isn't a convenient enough ride. It isn't a clean enough ride. And we have to do all we can to make that something that is a no-brainer for folks here in Los Angeles. So we started by forming a committee that Mike Bonin has chaired on the board to focus exclusively on improving that customer experience. The ad hoc Customer Experience Committee left no stone unturned, reached out to community members, reached out to the business community, reached out to the faith community, reached out to all of our subregions. And Phil will be announcing several significant ridership initiatives that came out of the committee's work soon. And I know we're very excited to hear about those as well. MTA's Next Gen Bus Study is another huge step forward and the first restructuring of our bus network in 25 years. Houston's recent work in this area helped them revolutionize their bus network and attract new passengers at a time when public transit riding is going down throughout the United States on buses. So we've made a lot of progress in improving the rider's experience. We proved last year that our homeless outreach, for instance, has been effective. And we're going to go from 2 teams to 8 teams, expanding our system 4-fold. We've expanded cell coverage on our subway tunnels. We've all felt that and noticed that. It's a much more efficient ride, a much more productive ride. You can make that sell to people a lot easier when they can get work done underground. And this weekend, we're going to launch all-door boarding, which will make a huge difference for bus riders in LA County. We've made more improvements in the works. We have more improvements in the works with real-time data, our TAP system, which we hope will be a seamless way to get around not just in our system, but any mode of transit here in Southern California as well. So my third priority has been to plan for the present and to plan for the future. With a strong and a fair economy, with a good environment and a healthy city for all of us, and to make sure that we had the communities that reflect and contribute to solving the biggest crisis California faces, which is our housing crisis, by making sure that as we assemble land and as we build transit lines, we don't exacerbate a housing crisis by pushing people out and displacing them at the very time we want to give them a way to get in without having to be in their cars. So first we launched the Workforce Initiative Now Los Angeles, or WIN LA. It's the most ambitious workforce training initiative of any public transit agency in the United States, to make sure that we have the workers for the jobs that we know are going to be here, building rail cars, putting together the tunnels, the engineers, the architects, the laborers, the building tradesmen and women that we need. And people can contribute to not only the quality of their life, but the quality of everybody else's lives as they have careers that allow them to reduce traffic and contribute to a better Los Angeles. This past Monday was great. I hope some of you saw it. It's the first time we've had our honor guard, I think, on the front page of the paper. But we kicked off a vision that this board, and in particular the CEO, has pushed to educate the next generation of innovators and engineers with a new and first in Los Angeles and first in the Western United States transportation school that will focus young people on filling the seats that you occupy right now. And we're going to focus on folks who are coming out of the foster care system, folks who have themselves experienced hardship as young people, so that we can make sure that the reflection of MTA comes from the very people who use MTA. I mean, isn't that exciting that today you're a bus rider, and then in the future you could be the CEO of this agency, or the head of the budget, or the head of one of the planners that's looking at how a community can be transformed? That's what we want to see. And we're making other plans connected to our quality of life in LA County, from MTA transit-oriented communities policy that we're expected to pass soon, and that cities like my own have already implemented so that we can go higher and denser along transit corridors, and at the same time get more affordable housing, and also to look at a healthier environment. So we passed this year a goal of full conversion to zero-emission buses by 2030. Did you know that in the world, by 2025, half of the buses will be electric? By 2025. So if China and other places can push, we can too. I know it seems scary, it seems way off there. Those of us who maintain a system right now is a big enough jump to go to natural gas. Trust me, we will be able to get to zero emissions. And when we do that, not only will it be healthier, it'll be quieter out there, because we love our natural gas buses, but boy, are they loud. Imagine listening to the city again when we have zero-emission buses. So we're looking ahead at that future, always doing our planning, but putting people first. It's about a safer and a faster and a more comfortable commute, an easier transfer, different modes talking to each other, focusing on populations who are overlooked, maybe because of their income or their language or their age, to help a child with homework, to get home to loved ones. This is what this agency is all about. And so at the end of this month, when I hand the keys or the gavel over, I don't know, the tap card, the symbolic tap card, to Supervisor Kuehl, a leader who is deeply committed to the people of Los Angeles County, I know that this agency will be in the hands of a chair who is thoughtful, deliberate, and visionary. And I look forward to hearing about her priorities and working hard as one of your board members to make them real. So thank you for an extraordinary year. Here's to the next historic year of building that future. And may we look back at these moments and say, the years indeed did tell us things, that in the days we could not see, but that we were part of a great agency and we built a great city together. Thank you. So with that, I think I toss it over to our leader and our CEO, the one, the only Phil Washington.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Let me just acknowledge the leadership and the dedication of Chair Garcetti and his team, Borja and Dan and Chun and the others. We love you despite what we say about you when you're not around. And then we look forward to the same leadership, the great leadership and dedication from Supervisor Kuehl as well. Let me just acknowledge the drivers, the mechanics, the service attendants. This program is being streamed, as Pauletta said, to all of our divisions. They are the face of this agency. Drivers, bus operators every day, train operators, just want to thank you for your great service. The state of the agency is strong. It is strong, and we could not be strong without the leadership of our board and our senior leadership as well. Let me just talk very briefly about how I believe we are positioned to become the transportation infrastructure center of excellence for this country and the world. We're implementing, as the mayor, the chair said, the largest transportation expansion program in the country. We are doing so many projects I can't even name. The projects are one thing, but the transformation of communities is quite another. And that is what we are impacting this entire community. So I believe, again, we are positioned to become that transportation infrastructure center of excellence. And what I want to do very quickly is break down for you through our 5-point plan how we are going to do that, how we will become the transportation infrastructure center of excellence. The first is implementing mobility innovation. This idea of implementing mobility innovation comes through, as the chair was saying, Measure M, the most ambitious and comprehensive voter-approved transportation program in America. Within Measure M, there's 28 by 2028. The effort to complete 28 projects in 10 years. I don't think anyone, matter of fact, I know no other region in this country is looking to complete 28 projects by 2028, which is the next 10 years. We're working to get those 28 projects done in time for, of course, the 2028 Olympics and Paralympic Games. We're partnering with the private sector as we look for different ways of doing things. We created the Office of Extraordinary Innovation. We have evaluated, that office and our team has evaluated over 100 unsolicited proposals that we've received through our unsolicited proposal policy for small projects, big projects, medium-sized projects. As a result of some of those proposals, we are looking to do multiple public-private partnerships. Two of those, the West Santa Ana branch and Sepulveda, and we are well along the way to doing that. We are also implementing the micro transit on demand bus service pilot program. We are pushing through on the next gen bus service. We are moving forward with the electrification of our entire fleet by 2030. We are being very, very aggressive, and we're leaning forward in the foxhole, as I like to say. The second of this 5-point plan is capturing the hearts and minds of people. How can we deliver outstanding trip experiences for our customers? How can we do that? The mayor and the chair mentioned our ridership initiatives. We are going to be briefing that to the board at the board meeting next week. Like other transit agencies, Metro has a slight drop in ridership. So as we look to reclaim riders and retain current riders and recruit new riders, we're looking to reimagine that bus service, the first such massive overhaul in 25 years here at Metro. We're reflecting the way people move around Los Angeles. We've learned from our riders that taking the bus takes too long. The #1 ridership initiative that we identified was speed of our system. People want our bus system to speed up, and we're looking to do that. We need to do a better job of getting them and their dependents or family members where they need to go. We're enhancing the customer experience through our advertising contract. We're converting to digital information displays at our rail stations, and we're providing amenities such as free Wi-Fi, charging stations, interactive tablets to search for community information and the ability to make free phone calls. We are giving back, as I often say, life's greatest commodity, which is time. We are actually looking to brand time. How do we brand time and convince people that we're giving them back that very valuable commodity? We're embracing equity. We brought to our board a month or two ago what we call the equity platform. What we're talking about here is that everything that we do, we will look through the lens of equity. We will look through that lens to determine if a project that we're doing, a new bus route, new rail line, next gen, micro transit, how do we make that project, and how do we look through the lens of equity when we implement that project or those projects? So the board approved that equity platform. It's a guide to really ensure that we're considering all people as we plan, build, and operate transportation, especially those who experience significant and persistent disparity in access to jobs, education, health care. That equity platform, we know that we are a bridge to many disinvested communities. I like to say that transportation is a socio-economic enabler that allows people to move through and actually create a new middle class in communities that otherwise would not be afforded that opportunity. So it's a key component in our long-range transportation plan process that is underway right now. We're also looking at our transit-oriented communities, and the chair mentioned that. We are looking to do what we can to prevent displacement. I often talk about how in the environmental stage of a project, early on in a project, you go to a community and you start talking about how you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You start seeking the opinion of the community, doing the environmental process, and by the time you open up that rail line or that bus line for revenue service, you're talking to a whole different community because of gentrification, because of displacement. Now, we can't control everything, we know that, but we can instigate, we can impact, and we can definitely influence. And so that is what we are looking to do as we look to the transit-oriented community mantra. The fourth big point is building the industry, and this all happens with providing responsible, accountable, and trustworthy governance within the LA Metro organization. This idea of building the industry has to do with building career pathways. The mayor talked about the school. This idea of, I like to say, a cradle-to-grave approach, a cradle-to-grave pathway. That cradle now, which we were missing until Monday, was the school. That cradle, grades 6 to 12, 9 to 12, that is the cradle in terms of this pathway that we are creating. The WIN program, our internship programs are next. All the way through the infrastructure industry, this cradle-to-grave approach with, of course, the grave being the CEO position. We're facing that major challenge of building the workforce. Not only do we want and are building that career pathway, but we're looking to introduce women and girls to non-traditional positions and roles. We've started, yes. We've started our Women and Girls Council to show and to make sure that women and girls understand the path to leadership in the infrastructure space. And we're happy about that. We're excited about that, and we are encouraging. We're looking at job descriptions that in the past have been written up to exclude women. Bogus weight requirements where you had to lift 80 pounds, and I don't even know if guys can lift 80 pounds. But we have taken that out of job descriptions. With technology, we don't need it. It was a bogus job requirement to begin with. And so we are doing things like that. I mentioned the transportation school, this idea of this E3 approach of exposing, educating, and employing young people as a workforce of the future. And then the fifth and final point is stepping into leadership voids. This idea of impacting, influencing, instigating, stepping into leadership voids. We understand and we know we do not control everything, but we can do these things: influence, impact, instigate. We can influence the affordable housing issue. We can influence homelessness. We can do something about these things if we step into these leadership voids, which is what we are going to do. Stepping into these leadership voids also really talk about, and I mentioned creating the first rail car manufacturer. I mean, right now, we have to order rail cars from all over the world. They're assembled here, but they're not manufactured here. We want to create a rail car manufacturing outfit here in LA County. We're laying the groundwork to start one. We are going to convene some of the great technology companies in this country and manufacturing companies in this country. We're going to convene them. We're going to talk about how we can create a rail manufacturing company. So what does that leave us? This idea of an infrastructure inheritance for our kids and our grandkids. You know, I talk about this, you know, infrastructure takes longer than the 4-year term of an elected official. I tell the story, I won't tell it here, but I tell the story about the second lieutenant in 1917. Anybody heard that story? All right, I guess I'll tell it. 1917, a 21-year-old Army lieutenant. He was told that he was going to be a part of the great Army convoy. The U.S. Army was going to convoy across the country. They were going to start in Washington, D.C., and they were going to prove that the Army could create a convoy of vehicles and travel all the way to California. And so there were balloons, and there was bands, and there were people out there celebrating the send-off of this Army convoy. And the convoy took off, about 100 vehicles. They took off on their way to California. And they got about 35 miles outside of D.C., and the whole thing broke down. The whole convoy broke down, and they broke down not because of the condition of the vehicles. They broke down because the roads were so bad. The roads were terrible, and that reminds me of this crazy effort to repeal SB 1, right? We're talking about, we're going to go back to bad roads, but the roads were bad. And that second lieutenant, 21 years old, remembered that the roads were terrible and that Army convoy could not get past or really out of Washington. And so 40 years later, Dwight David Eisenhower became the President of the United States, and he said, we need to build a highway system in this country. And he started the interstate highway system, and he knew that it would not be built in his 8 years of office. But he vowed, and it took about 40 years to build the entire interstate highway system. That is great persistence, and that is really going forward with the knowledge that infrastructure takes longer than one term of office or even two. It has to do with sort of transferring the baton, or in this case, the gavel, to the next leader who will carry on the infrastructure work that we need and leaving that infrastructure inheritance for our kids. I believe, as I close, that our children and grandchildren will look back on what we did with Measure M, and they will look back and salute us for conveying and educating the public that transportation is an ongoing need and it must continue, and building the infrastructure that we need in this country. So thank you all for coming today. Again, the state of the agency is strong, and I look forward to another great year under the leadership of Supervisor Kuehl. Supervisor Kuehl didn't realize that was her cue to get up here. Let me introduce the incoming chair of the LA Metro Board and the chair of the County Board of Supervisors as well. She will be chairing both of these great organizations and her team as well, Nicole and Madeline. We look forward to working with you as well. So, Supervisor Kuehl.
Well, it's either crazy or a fabulous kind of synergy. I'm not sure which. When I was a little girl and I was doing a TV series that was shooting in Culver City, we used to drive by the Helms Bakery every day on the way to work, and emblazoned along this top it said, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." So I thought Mr. Helms had actually written that quote, but it turns out it was from the Bible, which he may have thought was the same thing, but still. And I think that really applies to what we're talking about today and what we have been talking about, past, present, and future. I want to praise Eric. He's only one person who gets to be chair of this board more than once. The rest of us have to do everything we can in the year that we're there. And so, but he has done a wonderful, wonderful job. And I wonder, he's not gone yet, but I wonder if you might give him a big round of applause for all the great work that he's done. One of the great things that he did was to arrange it that we had to hire Phil because he had 3 people come and talk to us, and Phil was so outstanding that I thought he kind of set it up so that we would choose Phil. You know, have you ever done that in a search? I'm not saying really, but we could not be more fortunate in terms of the man who was attracted to Los Angeles to share the vision and shape the vision. So please also give a big round of applause to Phil Washington. I think we are very fortunate at this moment in time. We have an extraordinary board, have an extraordinary staff at Metro, our allies, the staff of those of us on the board who are placed in other positions and places. It is such a wonderful team. And I think that I want to say something, though, slightly radical and different from what both Phil and Eric have said, because they're talking about how you plant seeds now and hope that you'll watch them grow in the future. One of the things that I'm seeing today is that you can't always count on that. You could plant some seeds, you could do some action, and the future can unravel it for you. So I think the 28 by 28, that kind of plan is essentially saying, do it now. Do it now. Do everything you can now. Take advantage of the fact that the taxpayers are with you, that you have the talent available, that you have the resources available. Do it now. It is not that we haven't seen what we've done in the past. It is not that we're not devoted to the future. But I feel so happy and optimistic about the present that I am feeling very fortunate to be chairing this board in the coming year. This year, as you know, and I'll just mention a few things rather than repeat all the great stuff that's already been said, or as Winston Churchill said, everything has been said, but not everyone has said it. But this year, the CEO and the Metro Board has put a great focus on equity. It's not a change of focus for us, it's an extension of focus. And there is a difference, as we have identified in several of the pieces that we've written about it, there's a difference between equity and equality. And I think many of you have seen the graphic that explains this the best. 3 people are trying to see over the fence to watch a baseball game without having paid for a seat. And there are 3 boxes. One of the persons is a grown-up, maybe 6 feet tall. One of them is a young teenager, and one of them is a child. If you go on the basis of equality, each of them stands on one of the 3 boxes. The child still can't see over the fence, but you have treated them all equally, right? That is not equity. Equity essentially is the 6-foot-tall person doesn't need a box. The teenager gets 1, and the young kid gets 2. At that point, it's equality of outcome, not equality of treatment. And that's essentially what we're talking about when we talk about equity. One example, as Phil mentioned, and Eric as well, the CEO and the board focused related to women, an issue about which I care a great deal, not the only issue, but sometimes you have to say, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Women make up, I'm happy to say, 53% of Phil's senior leadership team. So he is not just talking the talk, he is definitely walking the walk. They've also established, Stephanie is applauding. We're proud of that, and proud of the men who see the value in that. We've also established, as Phil indicated, the Women and Girls Council, and really one of the points of the council is to take a gender lens as a service provider. 53% of our bus riders are women. 47% of all our rail riders are women. What is their experience? And previously we were looking to what we called a gender-neutral experience. But now we've discovered there is no such thing as any kind of gender-neutral experience. Men and women experience their lives, including their transit lives, very differently. So now we're thinking about planning intentionally for the kinds of lives that each men and women live. How are their transit needs different? How do they spend their days differently? The council is also looking at women as a catalyst for economic development. Because though the myth is that women control the purse strings, they don't necessarily always. They are making many day-to-day decisions, and also we want to incubate more women-owned businesses to do work with Metro. Not because they're better, but because if you leave out half the population, you've left out half the talent. And that's essentially what we have decided that we will not allow at Metro. At Metro, we have equal pay for women. That was not always the case, but the CEO commissioned a study to rectify pay inequalities, and that does deserve some applause. We've also created a leadership academy, which is 50% women, which exposes our employees to an intensive training across all the sectors of Metro, including those not traditionally filled by women. One of Phil's first actions established equal tuition reimbursement. Now, it's one of those places where if you don't take a gender lens, you might think you're treating everybody pretty much the same. But though about 30% of our employees at Metro are female, about 80% of them work in union-represented jobs. Why does that make a difference? Because most tuition reimbursement that was made previously went to non-represented employees. So when you take a gender lens, you go, oh my God, I never meant for this to happen. But our tuition reimbursement is like only 20% to our women. So we are rectifying that. We're working to increase women in construction jobs, creating a scorecard that rates our contractors' achievements in this area. We were talking about how we might reward them, and we couldn't come up with anything better than dinner with Phil, and maybe dinner with Phil and Sheila, not sure. Sponsoring Women Build LA events to recruit women into construction fields, meaningful improvement, more women hired on our large capital projects than ever before. But actually, our ideas about equity and fairness go beyond just the gender lens. This agency is really leading a transportation revolution, and we are perfectly situated to lead that revolution. Why? We have the highest transit ridership of any county in the state, the highest annual passenger miles of any operator in the state, 7 of the 10 most congested highway corridors, so it looks attractive to get out of your car. Our ports handle 86% of all the containers coming into California, And as you know, our board endorsed an ambitious plan to accelerate 28 transit projects by the year 2028. So we are not just in the middle of, but at the head of a transportation revolution. We're also embarking, as both gentlemen mentioned, on a comprehensive realignment of bus routes via the Next Gen Bus Study. So what is Next Gen Bus Study? What do we mean? How can we make a new bus network that is more relevant and attractive to our residents? How do they travel and where do they go? And are we going the same places that they need to? 75% of our customers ride our buses. And it's been 25 years, as Eric said, since our last major bus network overhaul. And we've changed quite a bit in that quarter of a century. We now have 105 miles of rail service, new transportation options like Uber and Lyft, not to mention all those electric scooters that seem to be crowding the sidewalks in a lot of different places, which is good, although I don't know if it counts as active transit. Have you ridden one of them? You just stand there and it moves. But still, you know, try not to run anybody down and learn how to stop before. I'm just speaking from experience. We have bike share, we have, as I said, scooters. We've really changed the way that people move. And we need to figure out, how does our bus system integrate with all the new ways that people travel in LA? We've got areas like East San Fernando Valley with very sparse bus service, but very high transit-dependent populations. And we need more reliable and frequent service, especially late nights and weekends. So we are pioneering two pilots, microtransit and mobility on demand. I mean, that's one of the things that the car-centric LA kind of ingrained in us. Can I go from my door to where I'm going? And if I can't, I'm not sure I want to do it. So this, I think, is a very important study for us to provide transportation modes that are more directly linked to people's destinations and also the origin of their transit. Help to improve first mile, last mile connections. And I have to say again, especially for our women, many of whom don't feel safe, and rightly so, making that walk from the station to wherever they have to go. It keeps them, you know, you have to think ahead. It's not only women that think ahead, it's not safe for a lot of us in some areas where maybe even where we live, or we think it's not safe even when it is. But planning is a big part of everybody's life. And when you don't feel safe, planning is a bigger part of your life. If you've ever worked with victims of domestic violence, you know that is definitely the case. But these service and infrastructure changes are costly. With overwhelming support for Measure R and then for Measure M, LA County residents said, I prioritize transportation. I'm looking to you to make those improvements. But our comprehensive countywide program relies very heavily on significant participation from the state and from the feds. And we aren't really certain we can rely on our federal government to help us right now. We do have something to say, however, about what happens here in our state. We've been talking about SB1 and talking about SB1 and supporting SB1 and needing to tell everybody what SB1 is funding, the $5 billion annually for transportation improvements, already funded the Gold Line to Montclair, the airport connector, the East San Fernando Valley line, the West Santa Ana branch, number of freeway hotspot improvements. It's vital that every single one of us remind people that the benefits of SB1 are important to them and that they need to protect them. So it's been a very, it's been a very exciting and innovative year under the leadership of Mayor Garcetti. I am really, really looking forward to serving as your chair. It is a little bit daunting, but as I said at the very beginning, being the chair of the board for the next 6 months and being the chair of Metro for the next 12 months could be actually a very interesting and good synergy, and I hope that it is. I am so pleased to be able to work even more closely with the wonderful staff at Metro, with my fellow board members, many of whom have already led the way on chairing committees and showing such leadership in their own areas. So again, thank you so much for sitting through 3 speeches and joining us this morning, and I look forward to our work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a few minutes left, so we're going to do a quick panel discussion utilizing some of our high school interns through our Transportation Career Academy program. One of those interns is Nicholas Gonzalez. Here's Nicholas. He just graduated from California High School. And Nicholas is going to UC San Diego studying computer science, and he will introduce our other two interns.
Thank you very much for coming out this morning. It's an honor to have everyone here. I'd just like to quickly introduce the two people who will be leading the Q&A. The first one is Rachel Chioki. She is currently she will be attending the University of Southern California to study biological medicine, I believe, and possibly minor in environmental science. She was born and raised in Los Angeles and truly represents the ideals of this city. And her partner is going to be Thomas Holmes. Thomas Holmes is entering his senior year of high school. Though he works as hard as a professional athlete, he was telling me this morning, he works not one, but 2 jobs. On top of that, he's also applying for his Eagle rank in the Boy Scouts of America. And on top of that, he's the former chairman of the NJROTC at his high school. So please put your hands together for them.
So my first question is be for Mayor Garcetti, and I'd like to know, how has your time in the United States Naval Reserve helped you be successful in your job as mayor and as the chairman of Metro's board?
Well, thanks for your service and what you're doing with the ROTC. And we have in front of us somebody who, before he became a transportation professional, was the highest enlisted rank in the United States Army. He was Command Master Sergeant. It's really remarkable to have somebody who had given so much of his life to that career and then shifted and also excelled so well in the second one. I think anybody who ever serves in the military learns a couple of things. One is how to work with a diverse team, because it is one of the last places left in America where, regardless of your income, your background, your race, your gender, now thankfully your sexual orientation, though there's some assaults on that from our president, unfortunately, you can serve all together. And you have to figure out how to be plopped down in places you've never been, with people you've never met, with a challenge you didn't expect, and go do it. And I think that is a necessary skill in life. And secondly, if you can work with everybody, you can work with anybody. And so I think those were the two things that I got. Being an intelligence officer, you learn how to collect information really well and influence people.
My question is for Supervisor Kuehl. One of the biggest deterrents from public transport is concerns over safety, especially among young women like myself. So Metro has made a 5-year investment to bolster police presence on trains and buses. Is this enough to cause a significant change in public attitude, and is the average rider safe?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding through the speakers. Can I read your question? That would be great. Thank you so much. Safety, young women, okay, I'm not certain whether the investment itself in law enforcement and sort of the appearance of more safety is enough to convince people. I think that it takes more in terms of a public public information approach, so that people get the information about what experience is like. For instance, if young women are worried about riding on the trains, they're not going to believe, some policeman saying, "I'm on the train now, so you don't have to worry." I honestly think that we need young women to be saying, crime is down 25%. There are apps now where you can report sexual harassment right away. Metro is doing a great deal, and this is very important to us. We need to be able to ride on the train safely, and I feel safe on the train now, so I invite you to join me on the train. I think that's all that's going to really convince people. In the women's movement, it was almost always one woman to another woman saying, this is what we're pushing for, this is what we've accomplished, and now it's getting better. I think it is safer on the trains, but I think people still we'll have one incident on a bus or, you know, things that are very difficult to control. And I think that Metro has made a great many improvements and will continue to. Certainly, while I'm chair, we're going to be paying a lot of attention. But I think the work we've done on reporting sexual harassment, on having more of a law enforcement presence in the trains that is borne out by the fact that crime on our various transit modes is down a big 25%.
All right, and this next question is going to go to Ms. Kuehl as well. Where do you want to see Metro as an agency in 5 years?
I think in 5 years, I would like it to be possible for every single person to get from where they are to where they're going as fast as possible, as safely as possible, and as conveniently as possible. I think that's the whole point of the microtransit idea, the idea of all modes of transportation being more connected. And certainly in 5 years, I want to be able to do what I do now when I'm driving with Google or with the GPS. It says, I want to get from here to there, how do I get there? And in 3 seconds, my phone tells me. I want us to be able to do that with all the modes of transportation included. The times that everything's arriving, how long it's going to take. So it's really IT, IT, IT. But I think that would be where I hope we are in 5 years. The IT fans were applauding quietly over there.
My question is for Mr. Washington. What is the most underrepresented demographic on public transport, and how is Metro attracting it?
I think the most underrepresented demographic is probably seniors. We need to do a better job of attracting seniors. I think the safety piece of it has to do with it. I think the understanding our system, because our, transit systems can be intimidating. You walk up and you have a big ticket vending machine, and that big ticket vending machine is huge, and you have to navigate. Maybe a 15-year-old kid could figure out, that machine, but sometimes seniors are intimidated. Sometimes I'm intimidated by it. I was in Paris. Right? I'm not a senior yet, but I'm getting there. But I was in Paris last week, and I walked up to get a ticket, and I had to stand there and figure out that ticket vending machine. I'm fortunate that I did figure it out, but I think seniors. And so we are looking at an education program for seniors. I was just talking to the mayor before the event today about how we need to make a concerted effort to educate seniors on our microtransit program. We absolutely need to do that, because I think that could be a real benefit for seniors that may not want to get on the bus, but they get on microtransit now. So I think seniors are the underrepresented demographic.
I agree, and as the oldest person up on the stage, I want to say there's an additional aspect. In addition to safety, there's also the issue of fragility. You don't want to think of yourself as fragile, but the planning that it takes to get from one place to the other, if you're not just jumping in your car, driving there and getting out, for a senior, it's even more important, because we have to plan each piece of it. How am I getting from here to here? How am I getting from here to here? Perhaps I have a walker, and it's not as easy for me to walk a half a mile, to get there. So I think that is part of what I'd like us to plan. I do want to counter the idea that seniors are not tech savvy. I would say that we're pretty cool now about doing all of that. I can push all the buttons, but it's not just seniors. I see people scratching their head, and I know they're not older than 35,
All right, and for our last question, it's going to be for Mr. Mayor here. After your time as chairman of Metro's board, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, I never claim an accomplishment of my own. I think our greatest accomplishment collectively in this past year has been setting the vision of 28 by 28. I mean, I think that is, to Supervisor Kuehl's point, a way of saying now, not 28. And I think it's also, linking together it's a crazy thing in the Olympics, right? I mean, it's a 17-day event in a city. I mean, we have 17-day conventions probably that come through here. But there's something that ignites the human imagination. I think that the Olympics were in ancient times. And the Olympics and Paralympics this time give us an opportunity. I mean, think about it. We got the opera last time because of the Olympics. This was before you guys were born. But an opera landed in the city. The murals that you drive by on the freeways, many of them are the legacy of the Olympics. We built tennis courts in places like Compton, so the Williams sisters were discovered and became two of the greatest ever. And Russell Westbrook, dribbled a basketball at the Boys and Girls Club that Olympics helped fund. And now we can do that. We can say, what do we want transportation-wise? Knowing the Olympics were here, Uber Elevate had their convention, or their conference here, which is the vertical takeoff and landing. You know, we've all been told about flying cars for a long time. You will see them, and we will see them together, I think, probably in 2028. We will see, the ability to move in different ways, to connect in different ways. Think about the Paralympics and accessibility. We can build a city of belonging for everybody. So regardless of your challenge, you can overcome that challenge, whether it's in competition or whether it's navigating a city. So I think it's that accomplishment of bringing those two things together, because it isn't just, oh, there's a date, how can we get things going faster? It's about igniting the imagination. I hope that this agency continues to, and I have great faith that it will continue to ignite our imagination.
All right, thank you. I'd like to turn it back over to Nicholas and Ms. Paulette.
Thank you, everyone, for making it out this morning, and a special thank you to Mayor Garcetti, CEO Mr. Phil Washington, and Supervisor Kuehl, along with the board members who were able to make it out this morning. I just want to say quickly on behalf of all the interns participating in the TCAP program, thank you to everyone who is working here, to the board, to the CEO. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to kind of explore this company and this industry and to see how all of you guys are working so incredibly hard to provide this service to the people and to the region and to help all of Los Angeles kind of thrive and get to where they need to go. So without further ado, I believe that wraps it up for this morning. Please feel free to grab some food on your way out or stay for a little bit, and that's all. Thank you.